Chapter 24, Moon Time, the Great Intellectual Triumph of Women's Culture. To interpret the flow of terrestrial magnetism, the dragon current, the serpent path, it is also necessary to watch the night sky. Night, to ancient people, was not an absence of light or negative darkness, but a powerful source of energy and inspiration. At night, Cosmos reveals herself in her vastness. The earth opens up to moisture and germination under the moonlight, and the magnetic serpentine current stirs itself in the underground waters, just as the thick, snaky sprays of stars, the Milky Way, winds across the night sky. Moon phases are part of the great cosmic dance in which everything participates. The movement of the celestial bodies, the pulse of tides, the circulation of blood and sap in animals and plants. Observation of the night sky, of the stars, especially of the moon, was the beginning of mathematics and science. Stonehenge on Salisbury Plain, 16 miles of Silbury Hill, does not exist in isolation. Its structure also represents a seasonal and human life cycle. It was probably the center or head of an earlier, much larger configuration of long barrows that stand together portrayed the squatting goddess. The Avebury monuments in Stonehenge, taken together, as Michael Dame says, may have been arranged to share the perfect celestial environment, just as they share the River Avon. Stonehenge was elaborated over a long period of generations and was rebuilt many times. Stonehenge 1, circa 2750 BC, is a contemporary with Silbury. It consists of the earthworks of the Outer Banks and the 56 Aubrey holes. Its 4 station posts are in lunar and solar alignments. The latitude of Stonehenge is practically optimum for moon-sun rectangular alignment. The Midsummer Sunrise stones in the West Kennet Avenue of Avebury and the heel stone at Stonehenge were both erected circa 2600 BC. The function of the Aubrey holes was to predict lunar eclipses. It is infinitely more difficult to study the orbit of the moon than that of the Earth around the sun. The moon describes an arc around the Earth that varies from month to month. The arc is slightly tilted in such a way that over a period of 18.6 years, the moon first rises and sets very far in the north and south, and then gradually moves its rising and setting points further inwards from these extreme positions. After 9.3 years, it begins to move back again, retracing its steps. We know now that the megalithic stone circles at England and Brittany were, among other things, giant observatories, running in dimensions through computers. Modern astronomers have confirmed that Stonehenge was used to calculate the solstices, equinoxes, and futures of eclipses of sun and moon. Some have called it a solar temple, but the major concern of the megalith builders seems to have been precise observation of the moon. The moon's eclipse cycle is measured by a period of 18.61 years. The 56 Aubrey holes are set to mark this cycle over a period of time, 19 plus 19 plus 18 years. More remarkable, many of the stone circles and alignments throughout Britain were built to calculate precisely the site periodic 9-degree oscillation of the moon, its wobble of amplitude 9 degrees or 15 degrees. The period of this tiny wobble, 173.31 days, or half an eclipse year. Such accurate knowledge of this small lunar oscillation, familiar to Neolithic moon people, was lost to the Western world and not rediscovered until Tycho Brahe's observations in the 16th century. The moon's wobble was known and accurately measured by ancient Arabic astronomers, whose traditional knowledge was not destroyed by Christian book burnings, library razings, and persecutions of intelligence. The Mayans observed it also. At this point, let's quote Pliny, a writer of the 1st century AD. True it is, I confess, that the invention of the ephemerides to thereby only the day and night, with the eclipses of sun and moon, but also the very hours, is ancient. Howbeit, in most part of the common people have been and are of this opinion, received by tradition from their forefathers, that all the time is done by enchantments, and that by the means of some sorceries and herbs together, both sun and moon may be charmed, and enforce both to lose and recover their light. To do which feat, women are thought to be more skillful and meet than men. And to say a truth, what a number of fabulous miracles are reported to have been wrought by Medea, queen of Colchis, and other women, especially by Circe, our famous witch here in Italy. For her singular skill that way was canonized a goddess. The charming sun and moon to lose and recover their light refers, of course, to eclipses, and apparently the knowledge needed to predict them, including the ephemeris tables originated with women and a female cosmology dating far back into the Stone Age. The chalk banks of Stonehenge Avenue meander for nearly 2 miles from River Avon to the Henge. There was even an enclosure nearby, very much like Avebury Sanctuary. It was called Woodhenge, and its egg-shaped ring has 5 concentric circles. At Stonehenge 1, in the concentric circles of Ditch, Bank, and Aubrey holes, the image of the eye goddess was created. At Stonehenge 2, 2000 BC to 1800 BC, the station posts are still standing, a half circle of U-shaped, vulva-shaped design and created with the precious blue stones brought from the Preseli Mountains in Wales, more than 100 miles away. That part of Wales was itself an ancient sacred center of the Celtic goddess Ceridiwen, abounding with stone circles. The blue stones are about 6 to 8 feet high, delicately colored and finely shaped. Nearby stands Pentrahan, the large gateway called the womb of Ceridwen by the Druids. Originally covered by an egg-shaped earth mound, it was a dark interior space where the Druids practiced initiation rites. Stonehenge is precisely positioned so that the distant hills aligned astronomically with the great stone arches. It was built to keep the rhythm of agricultural year in synchronization with the movements of the astronomical year. Even in historic times, according to Michael Dames, the stones were still related to the wheat harvest. In folk memory and custom, the stones could be counted correctly only by laying a loaf of bread beside each stone. The 30 upright stones of the Sarsen circle probably represented the 29.5 days of the lunar month, with the smallest stone, too, as the half day. In the final version of Stonehenge, built by the Beaker people, the blue stones were repositioned. The new feature of this unique use of stone lintels. Perhaps at this point, the alignment was turned more specifically into the solar temple that most male historians and writers so urgently want to find there. But even from this later Beaker period, goddess carvings are found on the stones. It is possible that the elevation created by the later trilithons were trodden at the first fruits ceremony, people climbing up by ladders or scaffolding. What appears to be a libation bowl carved with goddess eyes is sunk into the upper surface of the great trilithon lintel. Stonehenge is very majestic, but harsh and gloomy. Avebury is open, deeply maternal in feeling, at the heart of the beautiful rolling countryside, which is presumably why Avebury was condemned to oblivion for centuries, until rescued in the 1930s. And there is no thorough written account of Avebury between 1743 and 1777. Stonehenge, as soon as it was described as the solar temple, took all the attention and later became particularly popular as a Druid temple. The megalithic stone circles were used for the most delicate lunar observations. Alexander Thom, a British civil engineer who measured hundreds of megalithic sites, believed that all the impressive alignments of Britain were lunar. The geometry of the stone circles is derived from the extreme positions of the moon, stars, and sun as they cross the horizon. In particular, the moon could be measured against a distant hill slope, with all the lunar back sites marked by the tallest stones. The great 60-foot high menhir near Carnac in Brittany, the Breton coast of northwest France, when viewed from other megalithic sites, acted as a marker of extreme positions of the moon's orbit, and this lunar observatory stone dates from 4,000 years ago. Lunar sites, according to Tom, were often built in very remote and inaccessible places, particularly along the wild coasts of Britain and France and in northern Scotland. Night after night, the ancients used foresights on the Great Horizon Circle to calculate a curve on the ground, marking positions with stakes or rods. Stepping back each night, the curve obtained on the ground is, to a smaller scale, a graph of the moon's declination plotted on a time base. Tom notes that the megalithic people were mariners, traveling the seas to far ends of the Scottish Isles, and further sailors in those dangerous waters needed some means of predicting tides. Knowing from lunar observations when to expect an eclipse, they could then calculate the resultant direction and violence of the tides. There is no longer any doubt about the advanced astronomical nature of these lunar observatory sites. What no one mentions is that women were the first observers of lunar cycles. As the first agriculturalists, women related moon phases to planting and reaping times. Even earlier, women watched the moon to know the optimal time to conceive, to abort, to give birth. It is women who live the lunar cycles in our bodies. Becoming and changing are the lunar order of things. The moon exerts an identical influence on the magnetic serpent current in the earth. The tides are of the sea and women's menstrual flow. The lunar body is mirrored in nature, and it synchronizes with the flow of menstrual blood.